Okay, good afternoon. So yesterday we were discussing about Plato. I think we discussed till Plato's idea of justice, right? So we have also discussed the powers of the philosopher king, and we also discussed a question that is called as no law or ordinance is mightier than the knowledge of the philosopher king. And we also saw the argument that what Aristotle brought in, that any day collective wisdom is better than the wisdom of one person. So too much power in hands of one person leads to what? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. The last part of Plato, what we need to look into is Plato the first feminist? Okay, that is a point you have to know. This is one question they have asked regularly. So let us look into the ambit, let us take it as a question. Okay, let us see the question is, Plato as the first feminist. Okay, and let us think, they ask the question as comment, or they might ask the question as critically analyze, discuss, okay, or they might also ask as examine. So now if you say, sir, how my answer will be different? No different, answer will be the same. Okay, sir, how is critical analysis different from examine? Almost one and the same. Don't go literally in each thing. So basically here you have to write an answer, that you have to bring arguments, that how is why he is called as the first feminist, and why do some people do not agree that he is the first feminist in that regard. So starting with the notion that why some consider Plato as the first feminist, or what is feminism? Or whom do we call as a feminist? One who believes that or opposes any kind of gender discrimination, who opposes gender discrimination and believes in gender parity. So on a whole we can say one who believes in the idea of women empowerment. So in this regard, when you write the answer, you can write an introduction saying that Plato is considered as the father of political philosophy. He has written one of the most important book called as Republic, Statesman and Law. Then you can say that Plato is considered as one of the first feminists because many of his ideas spoke about gender equality. Like what? One, you can say that he gave education even to women. He never denied education to women. Second one, he also believed that women can also become rulers. He told it is not only philosopher king, even philosopher queen. So he allowed women to be part of public sphere, and you can say that he allowed them to be what? Rulers. Third, because his republic had state run nurseries, so it freed women from what? Freed women from domestic duties. And it enabled them to focus on what? Public sphere. So in these regards, we can say that some considered Plato as the first feminist because he brought gender equality, gender parity. But then you have to write that there is also criticism, critical evaluation, the counterpoints. The counterpoints can be in that regard. One argument, any feminist believes that women should be the end, state should be the means. But in Plato it was the other way around. For him, women were the means to achieve what? Ideal state. Second, what argument we can also bring is that if you look at his book Republic, or we discuss dialectics, that is dialogues through that Justice, Cephalus, Paul Marcus, Socrates, Crichton, none of them were women. All the characters which come in his book are men. Okay, so that is one of the second criticism, is that all the characters which he has used, in his book Republic are what? Male characters. There is not a single woman character. Third criticism what you can bring is that Plato, even before Plato, in Greece, there was a scholar called as Euripides. Okay, he was centuries before Plato. He also had written a book. In that book, he also has spoken about women empowerment. So some would counter saying that does not make the Plato the first. It means there were people even before Plato who had spoken about it. Then Plato has written one more work apart from this. There is one minor work. What is written? Called as Tiamosis. Now in this book what Plato has written is that wicked men will be reborn, or you can say will be reincarnated as women, because he believed in transmigration of soul and rebirth. So he told those who are all bad men, they are born as women. So all these ideas indicate what? That the seeds of feminism was not apparent, it was more of creating a state. Then how will you write in your conclusion? In your conclusion you will write that irrespective of what he has said, one can consider he was way ahead of his times, because in those times expecting men to allow women to be part of the political system was unheard of. Okay. So that is how you end your answer. Okay, so it's not required that you take a stand. Fine. And this is how you need to, what you can say, structure your answer, bring these points. So that's why now practice more on how to write an answer than just read. I think that is what Vinay sir that I told in this session, that be prepared, 150 questions, 200 questions, ready-made answers if you have. That will help you a lot in exam. That will help you to get more results easily, rather than sitting and reading unnecessarily. See, in mind what you will feel is that I am gaining content, End of the day when you sit and write answers, there is no content to write. That is one mistake what students do. Some people will try to become, what you can say, like PhD in political science. If you do PhD, there is no degree, UPSC won't give you degree here. You have to clear the exam. That won't happen. So the end product is that, how do I get a decent marks in the exam? So enable to get me a rank. So as I told, take up questions. That question itself, that what is that? Answer to that question itself is only in notes. So now we have, in notes we have this, Plato as the first feminist. But you have to take down 1 or 2 points extra, because in notes these points are not there. This Timaeus, Euripides point. Okay, these are all extra points, extra reading. Like what is this extra reading? That's what, if I am writing answer, this will be my 2 secret points, which others will not have. And that's what I told you, to get 300 it takes effort. 270, 260 easily you can get. Read one notes and try to reproduce that notes in the exam, fine. But yeah, if you are a person saying no, I want to score above 300, 320, 330, yeah, then you have to show some kind of individual brilliance from your end also. So that is why it's not that easily they'll give off 300. But that does not require to read more. Just pick out certain key points, keep it as thing. So these are 2 points what you can use it in your. Any doubt regarding Plato as the first feminist? If they ask the question as comment, critically analyze, examine, discuss. Any other doubt in this part? No doubts, we go on to the next one. So next, similarly, the other assessment, Plato as the first fascist. Plato as the first fascist. Let us think they give you the question as discuss, examine, comment, critically analyze, same answer. Now, what does fascism mean? Let us read a bit about fascism also here. Fascism was is a ideology in modern day times, we can say. Mainly it took birth in Italy. Okay, there is this fascist party. Fascism means their symbol was what? Bundle of rods. The same ideology in Germany, it is called as Nazism. There are difference between fascism and Nazism that we will do when we do ideologies chapter. Okay, for now, let us just consider them as be similar. So fascism was an ideology which believed that all men are not equal. They believed in the concept of Superman. What is Superman? Among humans, there are certain people who have extraordinary capabilities. And in German, they will call it as Übermark. Übermark means superhuman. And who was this Übermark in Germany? It was Hitler. Okay, similarly, fascist party, Mussolini was the head. And fascism also believed in ultranationalism. What is ultranationalism? Extreme nationalism. What is the difference between nationalism and patriotism? No. No, then what is ultranationalism? Patriot, what he told is correct. That's the difference. Patriotism is your love towards your country. Nationalism, there is always a comparison that you feel that your nation is superior to others. Ultranationalism means you are extreme. In the degree, extends more. So they were believing in ultranationalism. In the sense, you can see Hitler spoke about the greatness of the German Empire. Mussolini spoke about Italy. But you can see Hitler was more compared to Mussolini. And it was also based on what we can say, cultural nationalism. Means they upheld the Aryan race as the most superior race and they looked down on all other races as inferior. And that is why you can see Jews were Holocaust, Jews were murdered on large scale. There is also this one movie, if you have seen Jojo Rabbit. Okay, it's a satirical movie, satirical in the sense that they mock Hitler in that regard. So this young kid will be there, he's a Hitler fan. Then they'll show how he'll transform. So that fellow will be pakka Hitler fan. He would have read Mein Kampf. This is Hitler's book in that regard. And he'll have his own, he'll imagine whatever Hitler says is the truth. So for example, there'll be there only instance where this Mein Kampf will or this Aryan supremacy will describe how does an Aryan look. They'll tell blonde hair, tall, well built, etc. So this Jojo Rabbit's grandfather, they'll be all this thing only Germans. So that will have black hair. So this fellow will be always having doubt. This fellow's grandfather is a Aryan or a Jew in that regard. Is that later because his own mother will be protecting Jews in that regard. So that is the movie. You watch the movie, you'll come to know. So they believed in cultural nationalism. They believed that their race is superior in that regard. And Mussolini said, what is that? Mussolini said that there is nothing outside the nation, outside the state, nothing above the state, and nothing against the state. Means what? They believed that individual should always work for the state. So individual is the means, and state is what? The end. And fascism also was patriarchal in nature. So for example, they believed that men are warriors, and that is what Mussolini said. Mussolini said, what war is to men, maternity is to women. What do you mean by that? What war is to men, maternity is to women. What is that? So basically, duty of men is to go to war. You have to be a warrior. That makes your manhood. What is the role of the woman? Give birth to a child. That is when you will fulfill your life. So they never believed in women can be part of public service, etc. And fascism also believed in the idea of command and obedience. What do you mean by command and obedience? The leader will command, you have to obey. And they told they have to be disciplined. So you can see German's army was highly disciplined, that worked on centralized functioning. And fascism was anti-rational. What do you mean by anti-rational? They didn't believe reason is always required. They didn't believe always you need to be rational. You don't need to give logical explanation to everything. Why? They told reason, everything does not work on reason. Sometimes they told passion is also needed. When you are passionate, you can think beyond reason. Means they told these Germans, they had stories, mythological stories, etc. to inspire the youth. So they told you should not question that, whether it is true or not. The intention is not that. The intention is what? To evoke passions. So they told when men have passions, they can move mountains. So they told myths also have a role to play in society. They will create hope. They will create. So you can see there is also a debate, not in modern times. Is rationality more important, or faith is also important? Which is more? So there was one side said no, science is important. We won't accept anything without evidence. The other side told you cannot accept everything based on evidence. We need to also have faith. So this will how is that? No, we have to accept. Told no, both are required. You need science, but at times you need also faith. So how you prove me wrong? Same dialectics. So they told now what is the guarantee that you are the son of your mother? That's what they told. The moment you go ask DNA, no, I don't believe what you are saying, give me evidence. Come, we'll get DNA tested. Then I am convinced that you are my father, you are my mother. That is an end of a relation. Certain times things also works on faith. It's not only, everything cannot be worked on evidence. So both are mixed. But Germans were more inclined towards faith. They don't know, there is no reason, fine, don't question. That is what, don't question the leader. Go by passion, go by emotions. So that is why they told, that is why they had this propaganda ministry. They brought many stories to inspire people in that regard. So it was anti-rational. They saw intellectuals as only talk, no action. And that is why this Hitler and Mussolini told, no talk, only actions. So that is why you can see fascism went against intellectuals in that regard. That is why we see fascism is a layman ideology. Fascism is actually not an ideology at all if you actually look into it. Means they don't have clear-cut doctrines. It is just borrowed baggages in that regard. So that is why fascism is also called as hodgepodge ideology. It is a mix of many things. They are anti-communism, they are anti-capitalism, but they have a form of communism also within them. So that is why some scholars they define as what? Fascism cannot be defined. Fascism, in fact, they don't agree, it's an ideology in that regard. Okay. So this is fascism for you. Now Karl Popper, it was Karl Popper who called Plato as what? The first fascist. Means you need to understand, he is comparing Plato on one of the things what I explained, the ideology. Now when you compare Plato, we can tick Plato where Plato had this feature in him. The other thing is that, what is it? Where? Individualism means state is the end. You can tick on that. What is it called? And there was also a certain element of Greek supremacy, that he wanted to make Greek or Athens one of the most important state. But Plato didn't have other features. For example, Plato never told what warriors to men is better, because he allowed even women to become rulers. Plato was not anti-rational, he stressed on rational, he told the ruler has to be reasonable. Okay, he never told a ruler can be anti-rational. And third one, you can see Plato, most importantly, his end goal was to what? To create an ideal state, not a superior state. A state which is free of corruption, nepotism, etc. So that is what you can analyze and tell, that though he shares certain features, Popper has been very harsh and comparing him to Hitler in that regard. So that is a wrong analysis. But no doubt there are elements or the seeds of totalitarianism. But we say that his intentions were different. His intentions was not similar to the modern day fascism. In that regard, we can say it will be too extreme for us to compare, or you have this quote by Levinson, we are comparing the uncomparables, that you can use it in your conclusion. Levinson told what? We are comparing the uncomparables. Comparing the uncomparables. This you can use it in your conclusion part for the answer. So any doubt in this part, how to answer the question? Getting a point? See, that's what I told, when you need to answer in mains any GS or optional, that clarity of thought should be there. When that clarity of thought is there, there will be clarity in your answer. When there is clarity in your answer, yeah, obviously you are going to get high marks. When you won't get high marks is that when you don't have clarity of the concept, or when you are not able to explain what clarity what you are, then the problem will arise. So that's why I told, always basics are very important. If you are strong in basics, rest will follow. But if your base is only weak, then you cannot build any superstructure on it. Understood? How to address the question of Plato as the first feminist, Plato as the first fascist. No, you write in paragraph, short paragraph. You can write, see there is no one size fits all approach, but largely it should be in paragraph format. But for some question, let us take, there is a question, they say, what are the features of Plato's justice? There you can write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But entering largely, in certain areas you have to mix it both. So for these kind of questions there is no need of points. Write in short paragraph. But somewhere there you need to write points, you can use. Okay, you can mix both. You can use point format also, but largely I told you, use short paragraph. Divide your answer into short paragraphs. So when you are making one argument, let it be one paragraph. When you are making other argument, let it be one more paragraph. And also work on presentation. Presentation also is equally important. I mean handwriting, underlining the keywords, etc. So any other doubt in this part? Plato is the first fascist, Plato is the first feminist. Now coming to the concluding part. We say, what is that, the Plato and Aristotle, the whole European political thought or the Western political thought is footnotes of Plato and Aristotle. They might ask, comment, etc. Or they might ask, is also, Plato is a very important philosopher in the history of Western political philosophy. For all these type of questions, what we need to know about is what is his contribution to the Western political thought. What is his contribution to the Western political thought? Tell me what is the contribution that Plato has done, according to you, what he has contributed. The biggest contribution, like what Rousseau told, the Republic is one of the masterpiece or a treatise which has been written on education. So according to Rousseau, the book Republic or the work Republic is a treatise, best treatise ever written on education. Okay. Then you can say, even critics of Plato, they praised Plato, like this Karl Popper. He told, if you look at the Western political thought, there is nothing which Plato has not spoken about it. The whole Western political thought is either Platonic or it is anti-Platonic, but nothing is non-Platonic. Means either you are with Plato or either you are criticizing Plato, but there is nowhere you are adding something new into it. So Plato was, that's why we say, is the father of political philosophy. He spoken about justice, he spoken about ideal state, he spoken about equality, everything. Okay. So even the harshest critic of Plato did admit that Plato's influence on Western political thought has been very high. So what did Popper say? The whole Western political thought is either Platonic. What do you mean by Platonic? They have been influenced by ideas of Plato, or anti-Platonic, but not non-Platonic. Anti means they were critics of Plato. They were people who praised Plato, but they were never anybody who don't know Plato. So that was Plato's influence. And Plato's ideas is very important because Plato stressed on reason. Every argument should be based on rationality. So this method which was developed by Plato, Socrates, dialectics, that was the future carry forward by many scholars within the Western political thought. The other important contribution of Plato to Western political thought is that he also spoke about the idea of justice. He gave a view of justice. It has been developed now from what Plato told. So his contribution is what? The concept of justice. And the other important contribution is that he didn't diverse politics and morality. He tried to bring mixture, means moral politics in that regard. So he didn't see that there was a divergence between politics and morality, he told there is a convergence. So you can see he brought convergence between morality and politics. Morality and politics. And we also consider him to be one of the pioneers who introduced that you can revolt against the state, or you have to remove the state which is highly corrupt in that regard. So you can say that he is one of the forerunners. Okay, forerunner means what? The pioneer, the first who started. You can say he is one of the forerunner of revolution. Especially in corrupt states. Especially in the corrupt states. And we can also say that today there is a lot of discussion. Karl Marx, now he told that private property should be abolished. Private property is root cause. But who was the first person to speak about it? That is why we say Plato is also considered as what? One of the first communists in that regard. So you can say, but there is a difference between Plato's communism and Marx's communism that we will see later. But Plato was one of the first person to speak about the ill effects of private ownership of property. The other important contribution also, Plato also showed what are the defects of democracy. He also highlighted the defects of democracy. And Plato also had deep influence on his student, one of the students, Aristotle, who went on to become what? Father of political science. That is why we say Plato's shadows the Western political world. Means every other, they grew under the shadow of Plato. So that is why Karl Popper rightly says that what? Western political thought is either Platonic or anti-Platonic, but it is never non-Platonic. This is what you can write as his contribution or significance. Or they might ask you one more question, like certain times, see what they will do if they want to make the paper difficult. It is not that they are not going to ask you something which is outside the syllabus. They are going to just ask you applied questions. So if you actually see when you can score very high marks or when you can stand out is actually when they give difficult papers. Easy questions everybody will write off. Then you cannot make so much difference. It is only when they ask you applied questions, then everybody won't be able to write, because you have to have application of mind, right? See, now this you would have heard Plato's first feminist. Obviously everybody will write the answer because they would have attended classes or they would have notes for it. But let us take, they give a question, something like this. Do you think Plato's ideas have any relevance in 21st century? Discuss. Give it for 15 marks. How will you write? This is an open-ended question. Sir, which book notes is there? No book notes is there. You know Plato. You have read about Plato. You are living in 21st century. Obviously, when you are reading certain, you have to be also aware of what are the problems of 21st century. Knowing problems of 21st century, they are asking your opinion that to what extent do you think Plato is relevant, his ideas are relevant in 21st century. So, how will you write answer for this question? Okay. 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 Tell the points. What you see is not the reality. Okay. Okay. What else? Any other point? Men's development. Okay, fine. See, you are telling the points, but you have to bring exact reasons and you need to connect them. Like if somebody asks you to write an answer now, you have to be able to, bring proper structure in your answer. Points what you're telling is fine. Okay, Navneet Krishna. Marriage system of Plato can be categorized polygamy, monogamy, polyandry, something else. That even I don't know. I mean, I am not aware like what kind of marriage system, but for the guardian class there was no kind of marriage system in that regard. You can take it as I don't know that there was the state decided the sexual relations between children, but in the society I am not aware. In Greek or Athens, what kind of marriage system they had that point of time, that I am not aware. See, now first what you have to do is that first try to highlight the problems of 21st century, where you think Plato's ideas will offer a solution. Problems of 21st century, as like someone told, corruption is on the rise. You can see democracies are just procedural, they are not substantive. You can tell like 42% MPs have criminal charges in India. Then increasing materialism. What is increasing materialism? Means human greed is going beyond. People value just money, not environment, etc. Then you can see the increasing inequality. Because of increasing inequality, there is no access to education to a large section of population in that regard. And you can also say that even now in many political systems, nepotism is a problem. So where you can tell some Plato's ideas are relevant, that Plato, what he explained, the ideas of democracy is relevant. He has pointed out what is the problem. Then you can also say Plato's idea of state controlled education or state provisional education is also meant. State has to provide it. But you cannot say that state should control the education system. That cannot work in present day times. Then you can also say with increasing materialism, Plato's idea should also reflect that we need to have what we can say, real knowledge, true knowledge to understand what is a good life, what is the concept of good life. Like countries like Bhutan are following gross happiness index instead of. But all ideas of Plato are not important. For example, though he told state controlled education, that kind of education system leads to what? Subservient of an individual in that regard. And Plato was a critic of democracy, but in modern day times we say democracy is the most ideal form of government, and that is what Winston Churchill said. What? Democracy might be the worst form of government, but it is the best until we have an alternative. And you say some of Plato's ideas were too radical, and too radical ideas cannot be implemented present. And Plato's ideas of justice was mainly rooted to his times of Athens. In modern day times of Athens, we work on the idea of social justice. Okay, that we don't go by Plato's idea, because Plato's idea of justice was based on functional specialization, doing one's duty. But in modern day times, we see justice should also involve what? Rights. So, but however, we can say that Plato continues to be a guiding light. For as long as there is any ills in the society, any frictions in the society, any problems in the society, Plato will be one guiding light for the policy makers. Something like that, you can imagine. So here you need to apply the knowledge what you have read to the present day. So there you again have to write a balanced answer. You cannot tell Plato is completely relevant. Some of the ideas what he gave was relevant to his times. It cannot be implemented now, especially this communism of wives, communism of property, that cannot be implemented in 21st century. These are all too radical and outdated ideas. But the value system what he speaks about, morality and politics going hand in hand what he speaks about, these are relevant even present day times. That is what you can holistically take up. Get in mind? So that is what, if UPSC wants to make the question paper bit difficult, they will come out with these kind of questions. So these kind of questions, what will happen? You need to apply and write. Okay, Vidyadak, we can also link his education system to today's RTE, right to education. Yes, you can link and write. Under right to education, the state has promised it is going to give education. So bringing inclusively, that you can write. Again, point. So that's what I told. Before only you write and practice. Difficult questions, easy questions. In exam it is much easier for you. Why? Because you have already thought about it once. So points will come automatically. But let us think you have not done any thinking, you have just read the book and gone. Now they ask questions in a completely different direction. That is when you can say that people will complain that they have given out of syllabus. UPSC is changing the trend. UPSC, one thing always they'll do, they will change the trend. That is why it is called as unpredictable service commission. Because they don't want, see what will happen is that if you just keep asking the same things again and again and again, who has read for 5 years, 6 years, they'll have an added advantage. So the idea behind is that you create a fair play to the newcomers, to the old timers, etc. So in these kind of questions, it doesn't matter how many years you have read. It depends upon how well you have understood the concept. Your application will matter. Understood? Any doubt in this part? So this is what we can say that holistically about Plato. But now let us take up certain previous year questions what has come. So in questions I won't solve all questions. Some questions we have already solved, that I'll ignore, but let us take some challenging questions which we feel that you will be not able to answer. These kind of questions we will try to answer. Or if you have any questions on Plato, previous year question paper, you can take it up. See, in 1992, they have asked a question, reality is the shadow of ideas, Plato. This we already explained in the class, that you need to explain that how. Second, in 1993, they have asked, for no law or ordinance is mightier than the knowledge of the philosopher king. Comment. Yesterday we discussed, you have to explain what is law, why according to Plato law is useless. Law represents average wisdom. And he tells why philosopher king should be given absolute power. He says that you should not allow an expert medical practitioner to prescribe looking at medical book. In that regard. So philosopher king should be given a free hand. Law is withholds the philosopher king's abilities. Then you have to bring criticism of Aristotle, etc. But see, if you see in 1993 and 2000, they used to ask for 60 marks. 50. Now such questions won't come. It will be 20, 15 or 10. And Explain Plato's communism and compare with modern day communism. This question we will take up. Explain Plato's communism. Explain Plato's communism and compare with modern day communism. Okay, let us think it is for 15 marks. You are getting the logic, right? Every chapter you read, you solve all the questions which has been given, 100% your preparation will be good. But if you just keep reading and going without solving question, I will solve it later. You won't get that knack of knowing how to write, what to write. Now to answer this question, first of all you have to know what is modern day. This you know, Plato's communism you know, communism of wives and communism of property. Now let us first understand what is modern day communism, then we will go into the question, how do we compare. So when we say modern day communism, we are speaking about the Marxian or communism of whom? Karl Marx. So first we will understand communism by Karl Marx, then we will compare that how it is different or similar to Plato. So as you know, communism means what? Community ownership. Okay. Now Karl Marx in communism is a stage. Okay. So I told starting in the class, if you remember, this Marx belongs to which school? School of materialism, the opposite of Plato, school of idealism. So what is the school of materialism? Materialism basically means matter. So matter shapes the ideas, it is not the idea shaping the matter. So Marx was of the view is that these ideologies, ideas, philosophers are all false. God is false. It's an idea, God is an idea. For him, what you see around you, that is the reality. That reality, the condition in which you live, that will shape your ideas. So material conditions are more important. For Marx, man didn't think, man first acted. No, growing agriculture. So this is what we call as school of materialism. So Marx tried to explain the same, even he used dialectics. Okay, even Karl Marx is one person, he also used dialectics. But we call Marx dialectics as what? Dialectics of matter. It is not dialectics of ideas. What happens in dialectics of ideas? One idea is there is a counter idea, both idea will clash, a new idea is born. This keeps happening till you attain an idea, it is perfect. For Marx, ideas are false, matter is real. So for him, he believed in dialectics of matter, means he tried to explain human history with regarding to how material conditions have changed. Okay, he is trying to say society will change with respect to change in material conditions. Same thing, thesis, antithesis. So in Marxian sense, if you take, if capitalism is thesis, the opposite idea to it or opposite material condition to it is communism, socialism. Both will synthesize and that will result in communism. Communism is a perfect material condition. There is no need for us to build a better society. To understand that, you need to understand his idea of historical materialism. That taking history as an example, he will try to explain that how material conditions have changed. Okay. Now here what we are meaning by material condition, in any kind of society, what is the mode of production? Mode of production means how you are making the production. Now we say factories are there, they are the mode of production. You need money to own factories, capital is very important. Like that he will tell what is the mode of production from the start, and he will tell how inequality came. Okay. So Marx was the speaker or the voice of the working class. He told working class were exploited by the business class. Now working class have to unite, have to overthrow the capitalist class. So that is what you can say. The China and Russia, they are deeply influenced by Karl Marx, and that is when Lenin in Russia, Stalin, and similarly Mao Zedong in China. Okay, they all take inspiration from what? Karl Marx. Though Marx was born in Germany. Okay, Marx was not born in Russia, he was born in Germany. So why, what shaped Marx's idea is that when he went to England to make study, he saw that everybody is speaking that in England industrial revolution has happened, lot of development has happened, the material condition. But he saw a different picture. He saw that what exploitation was happening with the laboring class in that regard, slums had grown. So that shaped Marx's idea to think that why it is like this, why, what is happening, what is the problem, and he blamed capitalism is the problem. For that he will try to explain. He tells what? We are going back in history and in telling at a time there was no private ownership of property. Nobody owned anything. We are more like tribals. Similar to tribals. Community living, community dining. Okay. So this he called it as the pre-communist stage. No private ownership of property. But as slowly society started to develop, now your hunter-gatherers, they started to become agriculturalist, settled agriculture. This settled agriculture started giving birth to private ownership. This is my land, this is your land. The moment private property is born, Marx tells that the society will get divided into two classes. One is the haves, the other is have-nots. What are the haves? Those who own the property. Who are have-nots? Those who work on that property. This is the fundamental tell. You take any society, the society will be divided into two classes. On what is the basis of this division? Private property. So Marx will tell the mode of production keeps changing, technological development, etc. So first he will tell that after this pre-communist stage, we entered a period what we call as the slave society. Slaves were owned as properties in that regard. Okay, they were masters who owned these slaves. Slaves had nothing, they would only have to give in labor. So who are the two classes here? Masters and slaves. Then when we come, this is during ancient times. During medieval times, if you come, again the society was divided into two classes based on lords and serfs. Who is a serf? Serf is a person who works on the land in what we can say agriculture laborer. Who is a lord? Who owns large, like zamindar, who owns a large tract of land. Because land was the key, right, in this time, because land was the major mode of production. Land produced you wealth in that regard. Land was the key to the economy. So who controlled the lands? The lord. Serf did what? He just worked on the land. So these were the two classes. So this you can see feudalism. Okay, we can feudal period. Later feudalism, what happened? Feudalism broke down because now when these lots they produce, see here they never traded in cash. Mainly they grew, let us say if they grow 10 bags of rice, one bag was given to the servant, 9 bags were taken away by the lord. Now they had to sell this thing elsewhere. So a new trading class emerged. They used to help them to sell these products higher. Now this trading class started becoming very powerful. That is whom we call as capitalists. So feudalism started to break down in Europe. A new structure emerged, that is the capitalism. There are different reasons will go, rise of capitalism. Some says rise of capitalism is also linked to rise of Protestants in breakdown of the control of Catholics and rise of Protestant. We say Protestant ethics. Max Weber says that is also one of the reason for rise of capitalist class. So they became very powerful, and now you can see land never became the major structure. Now factory system came about. Capital, money became the central of the economy. So during capitalism period, the society is divided again into two classes as what? Bourgeois and proletariat. Bourgeois means nothing but capitalist class, proletariat means working class. So capitalist class means what? One who owns factories, machines, capital, money to invest. Proletariat is working class. Working class has what? Labor. He has only certain kind of skill. Now what Marx tells is that in all these three societies, if you take how have they evolved, the material condition has changed. That is how the classes also have changed. So what is the central of the economy? The property. So it is matter. He told matter is the central to that. That is why we call him as materialist. But he says that in every society there is exploitation. The masters exploited the slaves, lords exploited the serfs, bourgeois exploited the proletariat. Every stage there is exploitation. But during capitalism, the exploitation reaches peak. Compared to the two previous systems, capitalism is mainly happening in an urban atmosphere. Cities, towns have developed, communication has improved. Now the working class will actually come to their true consciousness to understand they are being exploited. That is when they will decide and they will rise in revolt. And Marx says that what? See, till here he has explained what has happened in the past. The next two stages, what he tells, it is a prediction what will happen. He will tell the working class will unite, they will revolt, they will overthrow this capitalism. Okay. State means kingdom. Initially it was kingdom, here you can tell government. In all three stages, whoever is controlling the property, they will be controlling the state. The state will be always working in whose favor? The owners of the property. Now what Marx says that you will have to overthrow this, establish a new state which is controlled by workers. And Marx says that it will be a violent revolution. What is a violent revolution? You have to use force to snatch the properties from the bourgeois. Otherwise they won't give up their property. If you try to change their heart, etc. No. He will tell violence is required. So Marx says that violence is the midwife of revolution. What is the meaning of that? Because why I am doing it quickly is that because we will be doing Marx separately again. This is only for you to understand the difference between Marx and Plato. He says that what? Violence is midwife of revolution. Marx. What do you mean by that? What is the meaning of that sentence? Violence is the midwife of revolution. Helper. Who is a midwife? I know who is a midwife? Basically a nurse. What is the job of a nurse? To help women to deliver. That is what we call as a midwife. So if you read the sentence, violence is the midwife of revolution. Violence will give birth to revolution. Without violence there is no revolution. So Marx says that without bloodshed, nothing new can be born. So he told, baby is also born. Blood will be spilled. So he says that for a new society to be built, there should be bloodshed. Without that, it is inevitable, he will tell. So after this revolution will happen, he will tell the working class, the proletariat, they will overthrow the capitalist class. But he says that that overthrow does not happen overnight. You know, they also need to control and run the state for some time. And that is what he says, that will lead to establishment of socialism. Socialism is an intermediary stage between capitalism and communism. So in socialism, capitalist class is overthrown, working class, they form their own party, this party will control the state and the party will run the state. Why? Even now private property is there, it is not completely private property is not, because with one revolution you cannot completely eliminate private property. Over a period of time, all the private properties, remaining private properties or remaining challengers, they will be all brought under the state. That is the final stage. When you have completely abolished private property, you reach communism. In communism, there is no private ownership of property. And Marx says that what? When there is no private ownership of property, what was the root cause of division of society into two classes? Private property. Today there is no private property. So everybody belongs to one class, that is the working class. You are all the workers under the state. Nobody is an owner. So there is no inequality. And he says that now everything will be owned by whom? Community. No state. He will tell state is also not required now. He will tell state will also wither away. He will say state will wither away. Means wither away means what? On its own it will perish off. You will no need a state. And we go back to living as what? And he told this is the best. That is why we told dialectics comes to an end with establishment of communism, because there is no other society which can be better than communist society. Whether that is true or false, secondary. That was his prediction in that regard. So this is what you can say modern day communism. Okay, that is why if you read your what is that, Lakshmikant, the word socialism what we have used in our preamble is not Marxian socialism or not radical socialism, it is democratic socialism. Okay, democratic socialism does not believe in use of violence, but Marxian socialism says that violence is inevitable, you have to use violence. And Marx says that what? After capitalism, what is the next stage will come? Socialism. After socialism, what is the final stage? Communism. And after communism, there is no other, because it is the end. We have arrived at the perfect model. So this was Karl Marx, communism, or what we say, modern day communism. So if you have any doubt with respect to modern day communism, this was simplified, but when we do Marx, we will go in more depth. But this is a simple thing. In a simple summary, what Marx told, every society will be divided into two classes. Why it will be divided into two classes? Private property is the source for the division, haves and have-nots, and he will tell this will end because capitalism is self-destructive. So capitalism is so oppressive in that regard that the workers will rise in revolt, and that will be a violent revolt. But communism immediately won't come. There will be a stage called as socialism, where the working class will form a party and they will rule for some time, and they will bring all the remnants, they will try to remove the remnants of capitalism, and finally we arrive at the stage called as communism. And what is communism? Classless, stateless society. There is no state, there is no class, there is perfect equality. This is what Marx wants. Now you compare and tell in what ways Plato and Karl Marx are similar and are different. Okay, first we will look at similarities between Marx and Plato. What is one similarity you can see? Both told private property is an evil. Both believed in elimination or abolition of private ownership of property. So both were against private property. Then What else? Working class. No. So you can say both of them, both Plato as well as who is this Karl Marx in that regard, both of them they believed in this, saying that what? No, no, yeah, you can, no, not idealist, they were different again. He was an idealist, he was a materialist. No. What we are looking at similarities, in what way they were similar. One is that both hated, both wanted abolition of prayer. Both believe in the idea of class based societies. They divided the society into what? Different classes. Then, what is the other similarity you can see with Marx and Plato? You come out with more concrete points. Concrete points in that sense are Plato 4 words are there, Marx 3 words are there. For 4 again 4 words. Same is okay. So both believed in state led education system. Then what are the other similarities? Okay, you can say both used the techniques of dialectics to explain their idea. Then both believed in the idea of women empowerment, because in Marx they believed that gender equality should be. Okay, these similarities enough. Now come to the point, what are the differences or comparison between Plato and Marx? One, you can say Plato was an idealist, whereas Marx was a materialist. He used dialectical idealism, this will use dialectical materialism. Then Plato's end was not to eliminate state, but to create an ideal state. But Plato's was, Marx was what? For a stateless and a classless society. Plato defended the class distinction. He told you have to preserve the functional or the three classes. Whereas Marx asked for what? Abolition of classes. And he wanted to establish a classless society. The other thing was that Plato tried to reform the society through knowledge, reason. But Marx told violence is the midwife of revolution. Then you can also go on to say Plato brought communism of both wives and property. Communism of wives and property, whereas Marx only brought what? Communism of property. He never interfered in personal sphere. Okay. Then you can say Plato's communism was only for two classes. It was not applicable to the third class, that is the producing class. Whereas Marx's communism was applicable to the whole society. So if you look at, there is a lot of differences between Plato and Marx, and that is why Barker calls Plato's communism as half communism. Plato's communism as half. So this is what you can write in your answer. See, Naveen Bhajantri, Aristotle is a student of Plato. Then why Aristotle is different from idea of Plato? It has to be same, right? See, I was student material of Shubhranjan ma'am. What does not mean I and Shubhranjan ma'am should teach the same way. Influence is there, but your ideas are different. It is not that you are a student of somebody, that you be a carbon copy of them. You are getting the point? So, even though Aristotle was a student of Plato, he agreed with certain ideas of Plato. Even he believed in dialectics, even he believed in reason, he believed in creating a state which can work well. But he felt that some ideas of Plato were too radical in that. So it's not to say that you are a student of insight, so everybody should think like Vinay sir. You can have your own way of thinking in that. What influence can be there? So that would be answer for Naveen Bhajantri. Okay. Yeah. As far as I have read, there was like I have not come across any Plato's view on religion, so I am not be able to comment on it. Christianity was there at that time. No, I don't think so. That time there was no Christianity. But I have limited view on Plato's view on religion in that. He will have believed in religion, but again you can conclude that he won't accept anything without the fact. But no, my knowledge is limited regarding to Plato's view on religion. That is more aspect on philosophy. But in political science, anything else with regard to this? Yarar idara? You can take anybody who has a philosophy can get, but they are not political philosophers. They are what you can say, philosophy of life. But you won't read about them, for example. And you doubt it. King Alapa, he is just a teacher in Athens. He is a teacher. He used to run a school. He had his own, what you can say, an education system. So he was not a king. You can say he can be considered as an intellectual who will take advice. The king will take an advice. So like that. But he was not a king. That is what Karl Popper said, that he wanted to become a king. Maybe he had an intention of becoming a king. That is Karl Popper. That is what he derives from reading Plato. But Plato was not a king. Plato told philosopher should become a king. He told because kings do not have knowledge. That is why these states are going to problem. So he told when the problem will end, if either kings becomes philosophers or philosophers becomes king. Anything else? This even I have thought about it, but there is no answer to that in by. Maybe sources in what sense? Even Indian sources are there. You have Manusmriti, you have Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda. In what basis you are telling they are more in number and not? You can tell in terms of influence. Influence, Greek philosophy is more. The reason is that the Greek philosophy grew towards the European countries, Western countries. Indian philosophy didn't spread so much. It was impact was limited. Why the impact was limited in that regard? You can see on one hand there was no, what we can say, Indian scholars exposure, or any rulers didn't take the Indian philosophy outside world. Most of the times India was invaded. India never had external invasion. That limited impact is seen in Southeast Asia. When the Cholas, they took many of the Indian culture, systems and philosophy. But in the West it was spread. From Greece it spread to Britain, from Britain to across Europe. But you cannot tell why the Greek philosophies are more in sources. There is, I don't think so anybody has done with respect to what is now. Even in Indian philosophy there are many sources. But the impact of Greek philosophy across the world has been more compared to the Indian philosophy. And the other reason also, even much later, if you see, these were all studied much later, right, when these states developed. Many philosophers or many, they looked at India as a very backward thinking, that there was not so much exposure to Indian philosophy. Only few people, like few Western scholars, tried to bring out Indian philosophy, like Max Muller. He was an Indologist. He wrote about India, and he told Indian philosophy also has a lot of contribute. And many people thought Indian philosophy is more spiritual. It is not so useful in terms of running a state. But some would disagree with that. They say, like, if you read Kautilya's Arthashastra, it speaks about the art of running the government. Even if you take these Vedas, in Vedas also there are many suggestions that how or what role a king should play. So the thing is that you can say lack of exposure, lack of, what we can say, the West always believed that they are supreme to the rest of the world. That in a case of it limited the Indian exposure of the Indian philosophy. But you cannot tell sources are more. It is the exposure is less to the Indian philosophy. And that is when now many thinkers are trying to bring out, say that, India is also controlled, like Buddhism. Many saw Buddha just as a political, religious philosophy. But now you have Kancha Ilaya, you have people like Upinder Kaur, who have tried to show that, even Buddhist philosophies also have a lot of political ideas, like the idea of deliberative democracy, the idea of soft power. So you can say that Western political thought impact has been more across the world. Indian political philosophy influence has been less comparatively, but you cannot tell that sources are less compared to the Greek or the European or so-called Western. In that way you can tell, but you cannot tell that source is less, exposure is less. So you can see the first exposure to the West from Indian philosophy mainly comes through Swami Vivekananda. He tried to bring, Aurobindo Ghosh is one more person who tried to integrate the East and the West. So that is what we say, even today the Western world who dominated the world, they do not have so much readings into, let us say, Chinese civilization. They have Sun Tzu who has written The Art of War. Okay, even Africa there are many texts which are written, but not sufficient research has been done in that. So that is one reason why there is so much lack of exposure. And even when British ruled India, they gave more emphasis to promotion of Greek philosophy or the European philosophy, to read and read. Indian philosophy, because I think when you read modern history, there was a debate, right? This, what is it? The Anglist and the Orientalist. And finally in the Macaulay minutes, Macaulay was in favor of more of the Anglist version in that regard. So that is how the Western education or the Western philosophy started to being the guiding light. The other philosophies have not gained traction, but does not mean that there is not much literature. There is, but research has been not done, studies have been not done, still it has to be done. That is what you can say. Who? No. It is there, but he never spreaded violence. Like he is saying, no, in time of need you can defend your country. Plato is not an idealist like Gandhi. He is not telling that he believes in ahimsa, but he does not believe like Marx that violence is a must. Yeah, when your state has to be defended, you need to have a strong army. the philosopher king has to take decisions. Okay. Plato does not go into the aspect of concept of himsa and ahimsa and all. He is mainly about how do you run your state. To run your state, knowledge is needed. And that knowledgeable person should run the state. And why that fellow? That fellow has knowledge to know when what has to be done. So in that regard. So it's not a believer in idea of ahimsa. When it is required, it will be used. Vinayak Ramadhar Singh. Marx went to materialism while Plato talked about soul with reason. Please read my comment also. Modern day communism talks about revolution to establish rule, while Plato's communism talks about development of conscience led to revolution, where revolution is only necessary if there is corruption. Talks about development of conscience led to revolution. Okay, the one point what he is trying to say is logical also. He is saying that in Marx, he says that the working class, they developed conscious, they became conscious, that led to a revolution. But in Plato, he is telling that revolution will lead to a conscience, means you need to overhaul the Greek system to bring conscience. That is the point he is trying to differentiate between Plato and Marx, that you can say it is correct. You get the point. What he is saying is that in Marx, the working class, they got conscience means what? They became aware of what is happening, that led to a revolution. But he is telling in Plato it is a ulta. Plato wants a revolution to conscience, a leader should come who can express it. So that is one difference what Vidhayak Ramadhir Singh is saying. That is correct. So any other doubt in with respect to this question? Because there are further questions in Plato. The other question is that Plato's theory of education is a logical result of his conception of justice. How will you write this? Easy question only, but if you know how to link. So the question is saying what? Plato's theory of education. Plato's theory of education is the logical result of his conception of justice. So this was asked for 60 marks at that point of time, but now you cannot expect they'll give for 60 marks. You can take for 15 marks or 20 marks. Okay. Discuss. How will you answer this question? It's an easy question, but you need to think and you have to answer. See, that's what I told you. What happens in UPSC exam? Now you read Plato. Now they have asked a question. Now you have to read the question carefully, interpret the question. Now you have to use whatever you have knowledge you have read. Then you have to try to write an answer. Plato's theory of education is a logical result of his conception of justice. So what is the first thing you will be writing in your answer? You have to first explain what is Plato's conception of justice. So in this, the main point what you have to highlight is that his main idea of conception of justice is functional specialization. That is what? Division of the society into three classes. that is soldier class, working class and ruling class. And each class should do their own work, they should not interfere in others, and that leads to an ideal state. Now what they are telling in the question further, his theory of education is a logical result of his concept. Because he had this idea of justice that logically led to his scheme of education. Why? Why it led to this scheme of education? To create that functional specialization, you have to be able to identify which individual is capable of doing what. And how do you identify? Through his education. That you need to explain. That is the answer. So since it is discuss, so you can say the problems with his concept. You can tell one, it is too abstract, saying that soul, it is not anything which is, it is more supernatural. Second one, you can say that his scheme of education is aimed towards building obedient citizens. And third one, through his scheme of education, he is taking away individual rights. The individual is made subservient to the state. That we cannot consider as idea of this. 3 or 4 points you write as a critic. But major component of the answer should be that you have to tell how or why his education system is a logical result of his, what is that, conception of justice. So first you have to write conception of justice, then you have to explain that how that leads to his education scheme. Last part of the answer you have to write about what are the drawbacks or the criticism in this idea. So this is how you structure question. So that's what I told, from beginning try to be good in interpreting the question. So I have to work on what? Solving lot of questions. Even if you have not written the answer, that's fine. For certain time period, you have to work more on what? Taking up question, breaking down the questions, and to see that what will be the demand of the question. So that will improve your, see, if you first of all to write an answer, you have to know what is the question. If you don't understand the question, you will just end up writing whatever you know. When you end up whatever you know, you won't get marks. It's like, let us take, now we tell this, Rocky Bhai. Rocky Bhai has a car, okay, let us think he has car. It's a white car, he brought it in 2010. And that car has 4 wheels, Mac wheels is there. And he's driven the car from India to India. This is all the information you know. But in exam they'll ask the question, critically analyze Rocky Bhai's driving skills. Now you just write what you read, that he brought the car in 2010, it is white in color, it has 4 wheels, they won't give you marks. That is information what you have. But to answer that question, first of all you have to know what is the criteria of a good driver. Once you know what is the criteria of good driver, then you will compare and tell in what ways this Rocky Bhai is a good driver. So if you tell, okay fine, he matches the criteria, then you can come to a conclusion he is a good driver. But you feel that he is not matching into certain criteria, you will write a way forward. What is way forward? He can join a driving school, or he can reduce his over-speeding ability or something like that. Similarly here, you would have read one notes, you have read about Plato, but they won't ask you to write about Plato or not. They'll ask questions like this. What is that? Plato's theory of education is a logical result of his concept of justice. Now if you have understood the link, you will be able to write. If you have not understood, you will just end up writing justice and education separately. And then what will happen is that you will think, no, I have written everything. In exam I will get 280, 290, but when you see your scorecard it will be 190, 180. The reason is that because you have not answered the demand. That's what I told. Main thing you have to do both GS and option is that you have to take up questions, try to decipher the question, try to say what exactly they are asking. So one that skill is there, answer writing is easy. The misconception what many students have, answer writing is about what? Just sitting and writing. No, that is not answer writing. The answer writing skill is more on how do you break down the question. Are you good in interpreting the question? Okay. Just writing pages alone won't improve your answer writing skills. You are getting the point? If you do this, then you write. That will improve. Just because every day you are writing one answer, does not mean your skill will improve. So even when you write, you have to reflect upon, okay fine, am I answering the demand of the question? Yeah. So if you answer the demand of the question, let us say content is poor, you are answering the demand of the question. If you are able to answer like 19 questions, 17 questions you are able to answer with poor content, but you have addressed the demand, 100% you will get interview call. You might not get a rank, but 100% you will get interview call. Fine. So the key aspect of answer writing is addressing the demand of the question. Are you able to dissect and know what exactly they have asked, and are you writing what they are asking? And that is where many people will falter. Okay, in 2015 they had asked in GS paper 1, in what ways Indus Valley civilization gives inputs or something to the present day or present solutions to the present problem of urbanization. So that time when many people they just wrote about Indus Valley civilization, then they just wrote, no, you have to first speak about what are the problems of present day urbanization, one paragraph. Then you have to tell what we can learn from Indus Valley civilization. There you have to write Indus Valley had wide roads, they had covered drains, they had citadel, they had granaries, there are storehouses, because in urban areas when flooding happens, to protect it. Wider roads, easier in present day now, easier movement traffic. Covered drains, it prevents epidemics, diseases such as dengue, cholera, etc. It maintains hygiene in urban areas. Rooms were well ventilated, because urban heat islands we are creating presently now. When you mix both and write, of course they are going to give you marks. But if you, let us think you write just what is there in Indus Valley civilization, you come back, you won't get the marks. So one most important skill, that is what we say, you have to hone up, you have to develop while doing coaching itself, is that your ability to interpret the question correctly, your ability to assess the question correctly. If that ability is good, writing ability will be automatically good. If that ability is not good, then no matter how much good content you have, you won't be able to answer the different aspects of the question. Right? That's what I'm telling you. Bring that thinking, read the question, see what are the different aspects of the question they are asked. So the better you, that is a skill, means what will happen, now you might take more time to assess the question, but intense practice will do what, next time you will be able to interpret the question in 1 minute, and that will enable you to write an answer in 6 or 7 minutes. But if you are taking 5 minutes to understand the question only, obviously your writing time will also reduce. So what you will do certain times in urgency, you don't understand the question correctly, so you end up writing whatever you know, and that will only produce average marks. So that is what told. So got the question here. So they are asking what? The Plato's theory of education is a logical result of his conception of justice. So when you are writing the answer, first you have to tell what is his conception of justice, then you have to provide the link between how to bring his idea of justice, he designed this education system. Then you will be able to write what are the criticism within it. Okay, see Vidayak Ramadir Singh has a good point. According to Plato's justice, state is a perfect organization, because he believed in his idea of justice, what state is perfect. To develop the fullest form of these traits, state-led education is very much necessary. So to choose the philosopher king who is perfect, you need an education system. An education system that will enable to develop the true knowledge of an individual. So don't worry that sir, I am not able to bring more. No, it's not about more points. It's about you write 1 or 2 points. Doesn't mean you every question in this question. There are not so much points to write in this question. That explanation itself is the answer for the question. Understood? State is individual writ large. This we have discussed. Is nothing but his idea of justice in that regard. This question. Let us see how many of you can interpret this question correctly. The question is, Plato's communism is a supplementary machine is a supplementary machinery to give effect to and to reinforce the spirit which the education is to create. To reinforce the spirit the education is to create. Nettleship, this has been told by Nettleship, and this is for 20 marks. This was asked in UPSC 2007. Yes, how will you answer this question? Plato's communism is a supplementary machinery. This keyword is important. To give effect, to reinforce the spirit that education is to create. So how will you write the answer for this question? Okay. What is the spirit of the education? See, you introduce about Plato. Okay. Then you write about what is the spirit of his education. What is the spirit of education is to create? So one you can say that the spirit of education provides you the distinction of three classes. Spirit of education will enable a person with knowledge to rule in that regard. It will enable a person to have reason while he is ruling. So then they are telling is that Plato's communism is a supplementary to this machinery. How? That's what how it is a supplementary. See, go by an outer. Correct. Correct. That is correct. So basically the purpose of knowledge is because he wants to improve the state. To improve the state, you want a knowledgeable ruler. And what did the city or state of Athens suffer from? It suffers from nepotism and corruption and ignorant rulers. So knowledge will enable to bring, or education system will enable to bring knowledgeable people to power. But he wants to supplement also with what? To ensure that nepotism and corruption is removed. To ensure that because he says in soul, even a knowledgeable ruler will have some element of passion. To ensure that that risk cannot be taken, what he says that he brings a second layer of protection. That is what? Communism of wives and property, or the guardian class, that is the ruling class and the soldier class. And then what you have to write? And criticize that his mechanism led to what Karl Popper call him as the first fascist, and he has subverted individual. Aristotle's critique that family and property are time tested institution. And you can tell Immanuel Kant, who said that there is no need of philosophers to become kings or kings to become philosophers. Common sense. Then you can end your answer by saying that Plato's diagnosis was correct, but his prescription was. So that's the key. See, that's what I told. The moment you realize what is the connection? The answer flow is easy. So what he told is correct, that is the thing. He is telling that communism of wives and property is the second layer of protection what education is to create. So education will give knowledge. The other two things, communism of wives and property, will ensure that you don't become corrupt or you are not attracted towards material things. Any doubts? Okay, so if you go through your that printed copy in the last page, there is questions. I think around 9 to 10 questions are there. You can also add additional questions if you find in last 2 years or 3 years in one plate. And your duty is to ensure that as you proceed, write the answers for all the questions. Keep a separate book for answer writing. One book for notes, one book for answer writing. Regularly practice answer. Okay, initially you might feel difficult, it might take time, but I don't know, keep practicing it. So once you are practicing it, once you have done it, so holistically now you are prepared, also you have looked at different questions that can be asked, so then you can say that your preparation will be pretty solid. But if you just read without trying to answer, see any subject, for the sake, any optional subject, to see always it will look simple, when you read, but is only when you write answers, then you will find, okay fine, there will be certain challenges which we have to face. So that can improve how? That can improve by writing more answers, solving more questions, trying to answer more questions. So any doubt in this part with respect to Plato? Any doubts on Plato before we move on to the next scholar, that is Aristotle? If you have any doubt, you can ask. Online students also, if you have any doubt, you can ask. No doubt. So now I will briefly explain Aristotle. Okay, what are the important ideas of Aristotle? What we have. So this is all we will be reading in Plato. If you look at previous year questions also, the questions have revolved on only these subjects. So that's why I told, don't unnecessarily try to read a lot and be more exam oriented rather than being what? Subject oriented. Now Aristotle is the second important Greek scholar whom we are going to study as part of the exam, and Aristotle was a student of Plato, and one of the most important work written by Plato or Aristotle is, his work is called as Politics. And we call Aristotle as also as what? Father of political science. See, if you tell sir why we political science did political science he developed, you cannot tell it's so completely developed under him, but he was one of the first person to bring some scientific approach into the subject. Like unlike Plato, he never spoke about souls and all. He only spoke about what he observed, what he saw. So the major method of Aristotle, how he understood politics, was mainly through observation and logical reasoning. This was the methodology what he used to understand politics. So that is why he is considered as what? The forerunner of behavioralism. Behavioralism is the school of thought later which developed, which wanted to make the subject scientific. So they mainly state on what? Observe. Observe means what you can see. Soul you cannot see. So that's why Aristotle didn't agree with that. So that is why we call him as what? Father of political science. And Aristotle is also considered as the father of modern day constitutionalism. He is also considered as what? Father of constitutionalism. What do you mean by constitutionalism? So constitutionalism is an idea that where you need to have a constitution, that constitution will restrict the powers of the established authority. Simple sense, it is a limited government. So who was the first person to speak about constitution, rule of law? It was Aristotle. That is why he is considered as father of constitutionalism. And we can also see that Aristotle has spoken out many things which are relevant even today's time. So he has given certain ideas, such as what we will be studying as part of the exam. One, the influences. As you know, every scholar we have to study influences. What influenced Aristotle? And Plato was a big influence. So though that many people think that Aristotle, critic of Plato, but you should also not forget the fact you will find Plato in every aspect of Aristotle. That is why Foster, he says that Aristotle is one of the greatest Platonist. Platonist we refers to followers of Plato, students of Plato. So who was the greatest Platonist? It was Aristotle. Okay. He was also great because he was able to make Plato change his own ideas. And so Plato is a big influence, and that is why there is one more quote where they say, the shadow of the master never faded from his mind. Plato's shadow is always there in his mind, because there is a lot of similarities between Aristotle and Plato. Then we will look into that when we deal with that question. Then we will be studying about his classification of constitution. So Plato studied almost 164 or 169 constitutions across the world, and he brought a classification. He tried to classify which are good type of constitution, which are perverted type of constitution. Under that you can see that he placed democracy under a perverted form of constitution. So please understand here at this time, when we say constitution, there is no distinction between the term constitution, state, government. They all is one and the same. Now today's time it is different. Government is different, constitution is different, state is different. But Aristotle's time it is all one and the same. When he says state, it is constitution. Constitution, it is state. So he brought classification of constitution. You can also say it is classification of states. Then the other important idea we are going to study about Aristotle was that his idea of citizenship. We need to understand, because his idea of citizenship is a bit different from the idea of citizenship what we have today. So today we will take Indian citizenship. It is based on birth. You are born in this country, you are a citizen. But his idea of citizenship was not like that. He gave more of a functional concept of citizenship. Means if you only perform certain duties in that regard, you will be eligible to citizen. And not everybody in that state can become citizens. Only those who are able to participate in public affairs, only they can get citizenship. And who can participate in public affairs? He told only those who have knowledge, those who have reason. Okay, that we will understand. That because he won't give citizenship to children, he won't give citizenship to old age people, he won't give citizenship to slaves, he won't give citizenship to captured soldiers. Okay, women. That is what I told you. Plato was more advanced. Plato allowed women to become rulers. Aristotle didn't allow even women to become citizens because he told they have to do domestic duties. So for Aristotle, politics is like a full-time employment. Okay, so that you will understand. The next theory is his view on slavery. Aristotle defended slavery, okay, because slavery was very predominant in Athens at that point of time, and Aristotle was brought the defense. So you have to go into his arguments that why did he defend slavery? He brought his own reasons for defense. Then we have to look into his arguments. Can we accept in today's time also the argument what he is trying to make? Then we need to understand about his idea of revolution. Okay. He also has spoken about revolution. He is spoken of in specific, he is written in detail. That is why we call him as the father of political science. What is study of political science? Study of state, how a state works. So he is given in detail that why revolution will happen, what is revolution, and he also classifies the revolution into two. There are general causes and there are particular causes. And he will also speak about what are the steps the state has to take to prevent revolution. Okay, so this question has been also, that's an important topic. Then we have to study about his views on justice, he speaks about three types of justice: distributive, retributive, and the other is what? Two types. General justice. So you have to look into his angle of justice. So this fellow, unlike Plato, he speaks about different models of justice. And this also we have to look into to what extent. Many of these ideas are found even in present day constitution. That is why we call him as what? Father of constitutionalism. Then we also have to look into his view on property. So though he says that private ownership of property should be there, he speaks about what kind of property can be legitimized, what kind of property cannot be legitimized. Means every kind of property which state has to recognize. He tells you have to recognize, means you should have been honest in your earnings. So property earned through corruption, etc., that won't be recognized by the state. And finally, we look into what is the contribution of Aristotle to Western political party. So these complete aspects we have to know from exam point of view when it comes to reading Aristotle. So today we will take up one idea of his influences in that regard. See, Aristotle was a student of Plato. So the biggest influence on Aristotle was Plato. But apart from that, Aristotle's social life also influenced. Why this Aristotle believed that marriage was needed? Because Aristotle was married and he had a happy married life. So he never thought that marriage or something, family plays a key role in development of one's sympathy. That's why he said your upbringing also influences you. But one of the biggest influence on Aristotle was Plato. So though we say he was a critic, you can see a lot of similarity between Aristotle and Plato. One, even Aristotle believed knowledge or reason is the essence to take part in politics. Like Plato, Aristotle also believed that you cannot separate politics and morality. Politics and morality go hand in hand. Politics and morality go hand in hand. And even like Plato, Aristotle also believed education is very much important. But however, he disagreed with his education system, but he believed that education has an important role to play. And similar to Plato, you also find that when you look into the ideas of Aristotle, you also see that Aristotle was also a believer, or he followed the dialectics method which Plato had. So that is why we say that the shadow of the master never faded from the minds of Aristotle. But where Aristotle disagreed with Plato was that we can say Aristotle was, Aristotle is considered as the middle path thinker. Okay, he is not radical. He is more of what? The golden mean rule. What do you mean by golden mean rule? You follow middle path, not extreme. So for Aristotle, where he disagreed with Plato? One, he disagreed with Plato's ideas of philosopher king. Why? Because he thought if you give too much power into hands of one person, absolute power corrupts a person absolutely. So for Aristotle, he always believed in what? Collective rule, okay, not rule of one. And second one, Aristotle believed that philosopher king or a ruler is not above the law. Rule of the law should be the main thing. Third area where he disagreed with Plato was that family. He told family has an important role to play. Family will develop values in individuals. So he told family is a time tested institution. And then if you look at property, he told property would be an incentive or an individual to work hard. Then the other thing is that compared to methodology what Plato used, Plato was more philosophical in nature, but Aristotle was more scientific, or we can say practical in approach. And like Plato, even he wanted to find or improve the functioning of Athens, but his goal was to find what? Not an ideal state, but a practical state. And that is why we call Aristotle as what? A practical thinker, or thinker of practicality, or a golden mean rule. So that is why we say this is the difference between Plato and Aristotle. So if they ask the question like, I don't know, the shadow of his master never faded from his mind. This will be the answer. You will bring a comparativeness. But here in conclusion, you should not end with differences. You have to tell that though Aristotle disagreed with Plato on certain content, but largely Aristotle's ideas were shaped by Plato, and Plato was in his every thought. And you can say the relationship between the master and student was such that even the master admitted many of the course correction what the student recommended, and that is why you can end up writing saying that Plato wrote a second book called as the Laws. In the second book Laws, Plato changed certain ideas, such as what? He agreed that philosopher king should be bound by the rule of law. He is not above the law. And second one, he also agreed that property and family cannot be completely abolished. They are time tested institutions in that regard. So that is why we can say that it is popularly called what? Aristotle's best state. Best state is Plato's second best. Understood? If they give this quote as the question, use this quote as your conclusion. If they ask this quote as your question, use this quote as your conclusion. So that's what I told. Many times when you look at previous year questions, that quotes themselves will be value addition to your material. Okay, it is no different. But the answer remains the same if they ask for both questions. And what will be your answer? Relation between Plato and Aristotle. Any doubts in this part? So this is one area they have asked question. Plato was the biggest influence on Aristotle. So in the next class we will be taking up his classification of constitution, his idea of citizenship, these are all small theories, and his theory of slavery, that why he defended slavery. Again I don't know, you have to understand from what context he is coming from. But again there are many people who have criticized him, Immanuel Kant, Rousseau. So that will look into what is the critics. So any doubts in this part? Any doubts in this part? No, there is a difference. This fellow is speaking more about functional specialization. In Aristotle, he says there are three kinds of justice. I don't know, distributive, retributive. Retributive means what? If you have undergone a loss, when you give a judgment, the other person should also undergo an equal loss. Okay, and distributive means what? Resources of the state, how they have to be distributed. For example, in present day times in India, we follow equity, not equality when it comes to distribution. So that is why I told his idea of justice is more practical, it is not philosophical. Okay, so that's the difference. Plato's idea of justice is more philosophical in nature. So that is one difference. That will go into the next class, his idea of justice, his idea of revolution, why do revolutions happen. What he has told in his idea of revolution is relevant even present day times. You can see in many countries. Okay, he says that wherever economic inequality increases, there will be political instability. Take Arab Spring. Arab Spring refers to revolution which happened in West Asia, in countries like Tunisia, Bahrain, Egypt, Libya. Why revolution happened here? Increasing inequality, lack of political power to people, all concentration of power in some communities. That led to what? People breaking out in revolt. So you will understand Aristotle. Ages back he has told that state should control inequality. Inequality beyond certain extent will lead to what? Rebellion in that regard. And that is why we call him as what? The father of political. Because political science is a study about state. And he spoke about how a state has to be run, how a state should control equality. So what you do is that first try to solve the questions of Plato. Notes, printed notes for Aristotle has been uploaded. Today we will upload, on tomorrow we will upload the written, handwritten notes for Aristotle. So your next class will be on Monday. So there is no class on Saturdays and Sundays. Okay, next class will be on Monday. And that's what, for online YouTube students, that's what, this will be the last class will be going on YouTube. And for Monday only those who have taken admission. If you have any doubt, reach out. So this will be my Telegram ID. At PSIR. So any other doubt? Anything?
Sir, Aristotle belongs to ruling class. And how did he get married?
ಇದು ಎದನ್ನೇನು ಹೇಳೋದು ರಾತ್ರಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ರಾಮ ಸೀತಾ ಕಥೆ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಬೆಳಿಗ್ಗೆ ಎದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಏನಾಯ್ತು ದಟ್ ಡೇ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಐ ಟೋಲ್ಡ್ ದಟ್ಸ್ ಎನ್ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ನೆವರ್ ಇಂಪ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟೆಡ್ that was an idea of Plato. It doesn't mean that it was implemented. That is an idea he presented in a book, but that was not implemented in Athens. See, China, Russia, etc. There is no the true communism what Marx spoke about. So, if you see Russia and China, in both it is state-led capitalism. Capitalism is there, but state controls the capitalism. But the critique is that they used Marxian idea to come to power. But after coming to power, that didn't lead to what stateless classes were. In fact, what happens, the state started becoming more stronger. Dictatorship of the Communist Party. So China and Russia cannot be taken as example of, though they say they follow the Marxian communism. That's the debate. That's the debate when you read later, the debate between capitalism and communism. Those who are in favor of capitalism, they criticize Marx as what? Marx is a god who has failed because he predicted something which didn't happen. But the defenders of Marx will tell you that why that didn't happen, because the followers of Marx, they didn't implement the idea in reality. So if you take China, in China there is no the ideal communism what Marx has spoken about. There is a more of strong government, strong state, that is the communist China in that regard, and communist China controls everything. Yeah, of course there are billionaires in China, the businessmen who are close to the Communist Party. Inequality is more, the reason simple. The party officials, the party head, they have all the power. There is a lot of corruption. So there is one movie which has come out, which is that Tetris. I don't know whether you have heard about it. Tetris, it's a movie. Okay, I think when you were youngsters, you used to play this video game, Tetris. So that movie is about how this Tetris became a global game. That game came from Russia. So in that movie, if you see that movie, they have shot a lot of things about communism. Okay, in Russia, how communism. So there you will see there is a lot of corruption within the Communist Party and the Communist Party officials in that regard. So that's what they just told for name, they told Marxism will follow, but there is large scale corruption, bureaucracy, and that is what derailed Russia and Russia's economic growth. China has been more impressive with their economic growth because they they follow capitalism to a certain extent. There are many Chinese companies now. What is that? Huawei, Xiaomi, Alibaba. They are all multinational companies. So China does not follow the model of exact. Which one? There is no complete communist country in the world. There is no complete capitalist country in the world. You won't find it. No, you take any country, even in North Korea where there is communism, there is a ruler now, there is a strong government now. No, in USA, maximum number of children will go to government schools, they don't go to private schools. That's what I told. Communism and capitalism are two extremes. Again in mind, in their original ideas they don't exist. There is no country, there is no society in the world till today which has attained the Marxian communism. There is no society in the world where you can tell completely private sector is running it. It's only the difference in proportion. When we say communism in China, state control is more. When we say capitalism in America, state control is less, but still there is a state. You get in mind? India, mixed economic model. So that's what I'm telling you. It's like you are telling car when you go to test in showroom, they will tell 22 kilometers per hour, but in actual it is only 14 kilometers. Same way, theoretically you can tell China follows communism, but practically there is no complete communism in China. That is what we say, it is a state-led capitalism. So there is no country in the world, Cuba, North Korea, there is no country in the world which has purely a communist form of society. Stateless society has been not yet achieved, state continues to remain. Okay. Similarly, if you take America, any country, it's not a completely capitalist country. Complete capitalism means what? Everything is run by free market economy. State does. When Lehman Brothers failed, it is the state which came to solve the financial crisis. State paid the loss. So that is what. When COVID-19 happened in America, it is the American government which had to subsidize vaccines. It's not that private sector. So that's what, these are all ideals. There is no practical capitalist state or communist state in the world. It has been not yet created, not yet established. So that's the answer. Hmm. 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 That is what you said now. That question was only that. That question what you said now, that what is that? Plato's education system is a logical, what is that? Logical result of his conception of justice. So at that time you didn't understand. No, you understand. No, sorry, it's a logical. Yeah, that is the answer for that question. Okay then, we meet on Monday.